What's going on, everybody? This is Peter coming at you through the tubes of the internet. Today, taking a look at the latest release from AJJ, an album called Good Luck, Everybody. I'm excited to discuss and glad you could join.
I've got the Normalization Blues. This isn't normal, this isn't good.
Fast facts.
Good Luck, Everybody, self-released by the band on January 17th, 2020, is the 7th studio LP from Phoenix, Arizona-based folk punk act AJJ. As far as I can tell, the only full members credited on this release are frontman Sean Bennett and bassist Ben Gallaty, but the album features collaborations with several usual suspects such as guitarist Preston Bryant, cellist Mark Glick, and drummer Owen Evans.
Backstory.
For the past 15 years, AJJ have been writing quirky punk tunes with unique and macabre lyrical themes. Their instrumental approach started off as a bare-bones acoustic setup, and over time has grown to incorporate more strings, synth, and percussion, increasing in production values throughout their run. And while this evolution has drawn grumblings from a reactionary contingent of fans, AJJ continue down their experimental path and branch out even further sonically on this latest release. LP7 Good Luck Everybody pushes the boundaries of the band's folk punk sound by incorporating southwestern musical influences and adopting a more topical approach in the lyricism than ever before. Bennett and Co. offer up politically charged tunes reflecting on modern life in Hellworld and skewering the orange buffoon at the helm. Not every take lands, but the overall vitriol flowing through this album is palpable and cathartic, and it leads to a great record that, when taken as a whole, works better than the sum of its parts.
Track-by-track analysis.
This release has 11 tracks and clocks in at 27 minutes. AJJ packed plenty of sounds into this runtime, so although it's short, it never seems light on content. I kinda wish a couple songs would have been fleshed out further. Tunes like Psychic Warfare build to a big climax and then just kinda end, but I trust the band made the right choice in not having these cuts overstay their welcome, and thus the half hour seems infinitely replayable.
Track 1, a poem.
A poem is a song that no one cares about.
The album's intro track serves as the lead single, and it wastes no time in getting to one of the record's major themes, the heartlessness of capitalism. The tune basically presents two options: sing for your supper or die of exposure, and then cast the listener as a deciding vote in this struggle. And the upbeat instrumental, paired with this indifference to life and death, really creates a demented tone. I love that this track features guest vocals from Jeff Rosenstock and Laura Stevenson from my favorite band, Bomb the Music Industry, because their cred in the DIY music scene, famously never charging for their music, really drives the line about starving musicians home. At just a minute-ish, this tune seems slightly thin, but it establishes a theme that'll be built on as the record unfolds, and it's surprising how much these short tracks add to the record when taken in the full context. Nice opener.
Who want the power and the money and the other good stuff you're bringing.
Track 2, Normalization Blues.
I can feel my brain a-changing, acclimating to the madness.
This cut finds Bennett with a crust lacquering over him. Every new atrocity he takes in from current events makes him feel both outraged and despondent, and serves as a barrier layer separating him from a human connection to the world around him. The fast finger guitar work of the band's early material makes a return here, and it's infused with a southwestern blues twang that draws on AJJ's Arizona roots in a cool way. It's a nice blend of the old and new that fits the theme well. A minute into this tune marks the first time Sean addresses Trump directly, and though he erupts with a really rapid-fire delivery, critiquing the monstrous rhetoric the president's known for spreading, he also acknowledges that this position is a figurehead.
Just an employee of the country's real master.
Stating that there's an even crueler group behind the scenes extracting people's labor and discarding the husks. Overall, I think this is a really solid tune, though a couple lines on the latter half give off a "I just want a grill" sort of vibe to me. The idea that people arguing for their rights is an inconvenience and it'd be easier to just tune this discourse out seems kinda weak, but in the end it's a good communication of what it feels like to live through the golden age of dicketry and really conveys the numbing effect of constant bad news.
I can see the weather changing and I can feel the soul decaying.
Track 3, Body Terror Song.
I'm so sorry that you have to have a body.
This track stays laser focused on its theme throughout and shows both the physical decay and the mental torment that come along with the meat sacks we're all collectively trapped in. Bonnet states here that your body's always in decline and you're going to be exploited and humiliated because of it, and there's diseases and injuries to make your bad body even worse. The vocals for this cut have a sort of haunting lo-fi quality to start the song, and for the last minute things get damn weird. The production really shines as the horror elements come to the forefront in the form of warped psychedelic instrumentation. Hazy xylophone plinks join pulsating synths and breathy, distorted sighs as AJJ delve into gruesome subject matter. The song becomes an increasingly bad trip, and the terror here is as advertised. It's a very cool tune.
Track 4, Feedbag.
I will fill my feed bag full of food.
This cut delves back into the hazy gloom that ended the previous track and the detached feel from Normalization Blues, as it finds Sean completely unable to connect with the setting around him. The lake locale and its inhabitants just drift by almost unnoticed, as Sean accounts for his basic sustenance and then just kinda checks out. It seems really telling that people are real is all Bonnet can muster on this tune. In the past, he's had lines like "people are very, very special," and even
People are the greatest thing to happen.
"but now everything good is dead" with
A bullet in the head of every decent thing.
The music just sort of drifts off to end the cut, and it's a big time mood. The track's pure doom and gloom, but at just 2 minutes it doesn't become too much to handle. The short runtime allows AJJ to slip in moments of total despair that don't make the record a slog to get through. And I think that balancing act is a really special aspect of this album.
I will fill my feed bag full of food today, hungry boy.
Track 5, No Justice, No Peace, No Hope.
The lake of dead black children that America created.
An edgy opening line starts this pretty piano ballad, and it's used to convey the idea that America's history of injustices against vulnerable populations has been a wound festering beneath our nation's surface. By a minute in, this tune gets to some of my favorite lyricism on the entire release, digging into Sean's naivety for assuming good faith actions among the ruling class, and realizing that only the most cruel and cutthroat actors get rewarded.
Leaders led by nothing men, dig first into oblivion.
Bonnet's singing chops here really rise to match the beautiful quality of the track overall, with dynamic melodies and a soaring delivery on the warbling chorus lines. It does a lot to create the pit of absolute despair described in the lyrics. Although this cut has a theme pretty much identical to the last few tracks, it still seems distinct due to the musical approach. The piano's booming throughout until the last few notes plink off into the distance like the last bit of hope fluttering away. I think this tune caps off a lot of running themes on the album up to this point, and it's one of the record's strongest tracks.
Again we've slipped inside a pit of absolute despair. That's where we live.
Track 6, Mega Guillotine 2020.
Mega Guillotine, I love you.
AJJ puts their second single at the halfway point of the album, and I originally felt like this song was too thin to work when it was released individually. But in the context of the full record, I've changed my mind and I think this track serves its purpose perfectly. It's true there's not a whole lot of lyrical content, but there doesn't need to be, because the track acts as a cult chant that puts the listener into a trance, almost defying them to not jump in and sing along. It's super samey throughout, but still seems to build in intensity, as the eyes become we's and the gang vocals broaden to a huge choir repeating the lines. The ringy sounds that phase into the background have an almost church bell quality, and with that religious aspect in play, the Guillotine becomes a savior coming back to rescue its flock from this hellish existence. If there's no hope, as the previous track stated, then voting for the Guillotine might be the best bet to provide a clean slate and start over. And while we're on the topic of 2020 candidates, I'm kind of concerned the Guillotine doesn't really have a positive agenda for change and might just create a power vacuum for other scumbags to step in. So that's why I want to propose an alternative and suggest Bernie Sanders 2020. He could help provide healthcare, stop endless wars, and break this stranglehold employers are allowed to exert over their workers in America. I wouldn't begrudge anyone for voting for the Guillotine, and it's definitely my second choice, but I think Bernie's policies could address a lot of the hopelessness that this album comments on, and this record makes it crystal clear that the options on the table are socialism or barbarism. BernieSanders.com, link in the description. This tune is nice.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Track 7, Loudmouth.
Here, Bennett's driving himself crazy, worrying about things he can't change, and trying not to let those things turn him too bitter in the process. Musically, this is one of the most upbeat cuts on the record, with driving drums pushing things forward throughout the verses, and big synth and guitar leads swelling during the instrumental breaks. And while I love the production here, lyrically I found this cut kinda muddled. It's tough to tell when the tune's being tongue-in-cheek, and it seems to switch from line to line without a whole lot of distinction. The strongest lines find Sean recognizing chud characteristics within himself and identifying with the reasons someone might have to be pushy about their opinions. But then the overall theme seems more like an argument for civility. I think there's some mixed messages at play on this album, and this track is the worst offender. It's maybe just operating on a level of irony I can't get in tune with, and though I like a lot of the individual lines, this is one where they don't gel into something bigger for me. Still an enjoyable listen though.
Know the things that I can't change. They'll buckle me beneath the weight.
Track 8, Maggie.
I wake with you when the weather.
This track's about being completely subservient to a master, looking to them as a caregiver and failing to have an identity apart from their commands. On the surface, obviously the subject matter is about a pet, but it's not hard to read between the lines and extend the metaphor to anyone looking to an authoritarian strongman for guidance. Sort of that Stockholm Syndrome element of swooning over your captor and losing yourself completely in their cult of personality. I'm pretty indifferent to this song. My mind jumps to the Hoteliers' tune Housebroken, which has an almost identical theme but develops it in a much more impactful way. This track's fine but uneventful.
When we go in the car, I let you put me in the box.
Track 9, Psychic Warfare.
Psychic warfare. I'm gonna murder you with my brain.
This is a track that AJJ have been kicking around live for several years, but the album marks the first time a proper studio recording's been released. I'm really glad the band got around to including it here because the lush instrumentation makes good on the line where Sean refers to this as a beautiful song, and I think this is one of the strongest tracks on the album. The urgent cello backing throughout the tune reminds me of Dilaudid by the Mountain Goats, and the bowed strings that build out both higher and lower in the register from there give this cut a huge epic quality. I really appreciate the moral clarity in the lyricism here too. Bennett very directly lists off the reasons for his Trump hate, and they're all legit.
For all the pussies you grab and the children you lock up in prison.
If this tune had used Orange Man Bad, Russiagate bullshit as its rhetoric, there's no way it would have worked, but instead Sean cites sexual assault, racism, and a disregard for human rights as the rationale for his ire, and thus the attempt to telepathically assassinate the president seems completely justified. I for one wish him the best of luck in this endeavor, and I really love this track. It's my favorite on the release.
Track 10. Your Voice, As I Remember It.
I long to hear your voice as I remember it.
Musically small and reserved, this tune stands in stark contrast to the one that came right before it. The instrumental has a laid-back western quality, just kind of shuffling along with light guitar strums and bongo taps. This is one of the album's longest songs and also one of its lightest on lyrical content. A melancholy longing comes through in the repetitive verses, but not much really grabbed me here. I think all the different audio file formats listed are a cute detail, but they're not enough to keep this one interesting for 3 minutes, and this is a low point of the album in my opinion.
To hear your voice as I remember it.
Track 11. A Big Day for Grimley.
I went back to the desert, little Midwest in me.
On this tune, Sean's taken the coldness of the Midwest back to Arizona with him and has to thaw out once he gets there. Jangly mariachi sounds over finger-picked banjo notes give a peaceful quality that matches the theme well. I saw a lot of early reviews referring to this track as a glimmer of hope to close the record, but that's not really what I took away from it at all. It seems like the titular line's being used to convey that you'd need to be a childlike, overly optimistic simpleton to think anything good would come of our current situation, and the ending whistling sounds to me like a patriotic standard warped and distorted all to hell. AJJ have used this ultra lo-fi production on past tunes like Cody's theme, but here I think the blown-ass out tone serves to show that wishful thinking is a thin veneer over the horrors looming beneath, and one person changing their physical location doesn't do anything to remedy America's problems. I love the call and response line delivery at the end of the song, and those last couple good luck everybody sound just as hopeless as the ones early on the album. Finding a semblance of inner peace is meaningless considering the existential crises facing the world right now, and I think this tune does a perfect job of conveying that despair.
Solitude for the stoic, solitude for the stoic, mirth for the merry, mirth for the merry.
Verdict.
Overall, I love this album. AJJ returned with a half hour of pure anger and detachment, and maybe it's the cold Midwesterner in me, but these themes are perfectly in tune with my feelings on the modern state of affairs. The individual songs here have their own distinct personalities, but also gel together to form a broader story, and the few boring moments get lost in the mix of really captivating themes. The album's ugly lyrical content, paired with its beautiful instrumentation on the best tunes, strikes a really satisfying balance that's kept me looping this continuously since my first listen. It's very of the moment for 2020 and a great way to start the year, so for that reason, I'm going to give this release a score of 9.5 out of 10.
Good luck, everybody. Good luck, everybody.
So that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the record. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the release, my critique, or the review format in general. Making this is a lot of work, but also fun, and definitely worth it if it helps some people wrap their head around the record. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.
It's a series of tubes.